Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. From my video series of exposing the free mass media's weasels, I will have this video in a conversation between, it's going to be a little short conversation between Glenn Greenwald, which I admire, I admire a lot, his intelligence, his courage, and not only, and the guy from the Hardtalk, a weasel from BBC. And I've been watching this for some time, many times, when I have to fuel myself with energy. I watch this kind of female dog slaps, and it just gets me going. So another example of form being more important than the substance. And I notice this has to be the new law in the West, where the form is more important than the substance. Like I see a lot of bicyclists go with a bicycle, they have all the attire, perfect. The bike, $5,000, everything. They're fat and they go biking about 10 miles and they come back home, baby doll. I went for a bike with all those jerseys and all that. Everything together probably is about $8,000 or $9,000 on them as the equipment. That's the form. But the substance, they go 5-7 miles and then they come home and eat steak and go to sleep and drink some beer. Now that's the substance. You know, so we have here this video where you have Glenn Greenwald, who was helped the whistleblower Edward Snowden bring outside and inform us the substance of what's going on with this big NSA massive program of looking over us, helping us. You know what I mean? Yes, I think you know what I mean. And instead of this guy from the Hardtalk, I think it is, this weasel, asking Glenn Greenwald about it and so on, he asks details. Hey, there were some governmental agencies in Great Britain that says that you might have disclosed some confidential information, therefore you could be charged with this and that. And Glenn is gonna slap this guy around. Why? Because he's gonna say, well, you trust those guys that lied before instead of trusting us, and you're the mass media. You should keep their feet to the fire, not our, or whatever the truth is. And this guy, this weasel, I watched him a lot. I'm going to make a lot of videos about this weasel from the Hardtalk, a lot. He's a guy that I would, oh my God, anyway, help him, you know. He interrupts Glenn Greenwald, and Glenn Greenwald, who is interviewed probably at that point from Rio de Janeiro, where he lives. I think he still lives in Rio de Janeiro with his partner, blah blah blah, Miranda. I can't remember his first name. Anyway, interrupts Glenn. Now Glenn, it's you know, it's how do you call it? It's delayed between what the weasel from BBC says and Glenn hears in the earpiece. So it's going to be this guy's going to talk, the other guy's going to react, but you're going to realize how Glenn is going to make a case like, you trust those guys, let me remind you of that. And this guy's going to start, no, don't tell me that, don't tell me that. I want you to see how this guy is, the guy from Hardtalk, the weasel, the BBC weasel, defends the establishment, attacks Glenn, doesn't let him talk, and is just a weasel. And Glenn is going to pick up the same thing. You should talk with them. You believe them? Why? Based on what? Because they are what? Agencies, basically. So I have this video here, and let me see if I got it at volume is up. Let's see. Not you, obviously. Not more videos. Up. Let's go.
You don't trust, plainly don't trust, all of the security chiefs who've lined up to say that what you've done, the stories you've written, have...
So you don't trust the security chiefs? No, I don't. For obvious reasons, and he's going to tell you why.
...fundamentally undermined security and aided and abetted terrorism. I'll just point you to the evidence of Oliver Robbins, the Deputy National Security Advisor for Intelligence in the UK Cabinet Office, who says, and he said this...
He's quiet, he's listening. He's a lawyer, he's a very intelligent guy. He's listening patiently, he's ready, look at his mouth, he's ready, but waits for this weasel to finish his BS.
in written evidence in a court case, it is known that in the seized material is personal information that would allow intelligence staff to be identified, including those deployed overseas. He says the government has had to assume that copies of information held by Mr. Snowden may now be held by one or more other states. You're saying he is not telling the truth.
Okay, this is what the BS, and this guy's gonna start talking. Okay, you trust those guys? Let me tell you about those guys.
There was this thing called the Iraq War, in which the US and the UK governments persuaded their media outlets and their populations to support an aggressive attack on another country by making one false claim after the next, designed to scare the population into believing that there was a security threat that didn't actually exist, that they had to go to war in order to stop. What journalism is about is it's based on the premise that when people like Mr. Robbins and others who exercise power in the dark make those kinds of claims to justify their own power, they're often lying. They often tell things to the population that turns out to be untrue. And the job of a journalist is not to investigate other journalists who are investigating those powerful officials. It's to try and be responsible when telling their viewers and readers what government officials are saying, and then to assess whether there's evidence for it. That's my role as a journalist. You don't have to rely on my statements.
You are saying something so explosive, I have to challenge it.
See, he interrupted. Explosive. He interrupted him. And here we go again.
You're accusing the most senior intelligence officials on both sides of the Atlantic of routine and systematic lying. What is your evidence? You say, look at the Iraq War, but what is your evidence that when people like the head of GCHQ and the head of MI6 say that there is real evidence that since your revelations, the sort...
See his patient? He lets him talk. He lets him talk.
...of communications conducted by terrorists has changed because they've adapted to what they've learned from you. Where is your evidence those intelligence chiefs are lying?
Listen to this.
First of all, I think the Iraq War is a pretty significant example of the propensity. If you want to scream at me and make all kinds of filibustering remarks, I can just disconnect and you can do that. But if you want to ask me a question, you're going to give me time to actually answer it.
Now that's balls. So the weasel interrupted him again when he provided the evidence. There's the evidence. They are not trustworthy. The guy defended the authorities, not this guy at all. Not that he's supposed to defend this guy, but the way the guy formulates his questions. And this guy says, hey, if you don't like my answer, I can just, go away. And if you keep interrupting me and, interrupting me so you filibuster me, actually. Filibustering me. That's, what the hell? What do you do? I'm going to be out.
And just disconnect and you can do that. But if you want to ask me a question, if you want to scream at me, if you want to scream at me and make all kinds of filibustering remarks, I can just disconnect and you can do that. But if you want to ask me a question, you're going to give me time to actually answer.
Correct.
The evidence that government officials lie is found in history with things like the Iraq War, when the US and the UK destroyed a country of 26 million people based on lies they told over the course of 2 years to their population. And if you look at what happens in countries where there's constitutional guarantees of a free press, which I know doesn't include the UK, but includes most Western democracies.
Did you hear? Doesn't include the UK.
What you find is all sorts of people who have created those protections have done so based on the recognition that people in power, specifically national security officials, will routinely lie to their population. The evidence that I have is that 3 Democratic senators just 2 weeks ago in the United States who are on the Intelligence Committee and have access to classified information came out and said that the claims of NSA officials and others that these programs have stopped terrorist plots is completely false, that there is no evidence for it.
All right, my friends, this is feisty Glenn Greenwald. Obviously, he's very articulated, very smart, very courageous, and he smacked that guy from Hardtalk, which I have a lot of interviews that he conducted with, I think, Putin as well, Lavrov, and Ahmadinejad, and he gets smacked from time to time. but you're gonna hear his chutzpah and his arrogance in the way he asks the questions, and he interrupts all the time. He's not an as someone said, these guys are not journalists. These guys are agents. Well, maybe not, but the way they act, definitely they're not in the middle. They don't want to find what happens. What happened. They want to find out. They want to prove a point, and they want to embarrass. The whole interview here is longer than that. The whole interview here is just to discredit Glenn. That was the whole interview, and that arrogant mofo succeeds sometimes. He's arrogant. I will play another video with him, with this guy from Hardtalk, talking to Jordan Peterson, the psychologist, fantastic Jordan Peterson. And again, Jordan Peterson smacks the guy again, like, if you don't like my answer, why do you ask me? This is my answer, you don't like it, shove it in your butt and leave me alone. So again, I will make that video pretty soon. So this is the level of the free press and media in the world. I'm not saying again to not to press the person that you invited to the show, but this guy is, let me give you this, form versus substance. Let's say someone comes and tells you that in that family, let's say in that house over there, let's say the father or the stepfather sexually molests, the 13-year-old stepdaughter, okay? And someone, let's say, looks through the window and he sees that happens. And the guy who sees through the window in the house, okay, being on their property, he commits probably an illegality. He goes and reports to the police, notifies the authorities. The authorities come, find out, arrest the perpetrator, which is the pedophile, the criminal, the abuser. And then the abuser in the courtroom will say, well, a technicality, he would not have seen me if he didn't cross into my property and invade my privacy, looking through the window, whatever he did. So based on that technicality, which seemed to be more important than the crime you were committing, this is what these guys are doing. They're more interested in the technicality. Hey, you find me stealing, but you found me in an illegal way. Therefore, all the charges dropped. Not that they found out that these guys were committing a bigger crime than the little one the other side was committing to reveal these guys' big crime. The same here. The problem here was not that the NSA is a massive surveillance program. Not that. That was not the problem of the Mr. Hardtalk BBC. The problem was that some weasels in the UK government and MI6 and think that maybe something was not okay over there when that guy disclosed something much bigger of a crime. Now that guy is a good BBC agent. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.